Alright, now we're going to recap what we learned as in regards with G shape, open G shape. We know our G chord, but around that G chord is a whole little community of notes that we can use. We can use the pentatonic major in open position. There's a nice little scale pattern that fits in, and that's in figure 1. So we know that at any point when we're playing that G, we can add notes from that scale pattern and everything will be alright. We don't want to lose our G tone. We don't want to get too crazy with it. But we can add notes. Any of those notes will play with that G chord, is what I'm trying to say. So there was a little funny note there. Any of those notes will go with that G chord though, so do not be afraid to experiment with it. In figure 2 we have the G major scale, which is similar to the pentatonic, except we're adding the 4th and 7th scale step, and that would be the only difference. And here it is if you played it. And then of course that open G right there, that's the octave, and in the tab it's in parentheses. Again, the notes that we've changed, or excuse me, the notes that we've added is the 4th and 7th scale step. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we added the C, 5, 6, 7, and we've added the F sharp. And we use this major scale to build our chords and chord progressions, and we'll learn a little bit more about building chord progressions later in the course. We can use the pentatonic from figure 1 as adding fills, and you can do that with the major scale too, but with the addition of the 4th and 7th scale steps, those are the steps that create the most dissonance. They're a half step away from the notes, either right before them or right after. See, 1, 2, 3. That was just a half step. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and half step away from the tonic, which is the G. In figure 3 we have the relative minor of G, which is E minor. So in measure 1 we have that G major scale again, and in the second measure we have the E minor scale, which consists of the same notes as the G major scale, the E minor does, but it starts on an E minor instead of a G. So if we played the G major scale, we'd play those series of notes in order like that, starting on G. If we wanted the E minor, we'd start on the E minor and play the same series of notes. I mean, it's the same 7 notes, just starting at a different spot, and it gives a total different sound to the chord or the scale. We also learn variations of chords that you can make with using the G chord and adding notes, other notes from the G major scale that are not incorporated in the chord. So the G chord has 3 different notes, and the G major scale has 7 different notes. So we can create more chords by adding the notes from the major scale on top of what we already have. For example, in figure 4 we have the G suspended 4th, and all we're doing is adding to the addition of the G chord, which is the 1st, 3rd, and 5th. We're adding the 4th scale step, and we get that we know it's the 4th scale step because we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and we figure out that that's a C, and the 1st fret of the B string is a C. So by adding that C note, we get a suspended 4th. And of course the suspended chords always want to resolve back to G. You don't have to always resolve it if you don't want it, but it's just something our ears tell us we want to hear. But there's three other possibilities. There's a suspended second, G6, and a G major 7, and those are using the other 3 scale steps. And I would suggest go back and reviewing that if you don't quite understand that at this point. Figure 5, we have the G slash chords. And of course the slash chords, we're changing the root note. We're keeping the chord the same except for the lowest note. And so we're changing the lowest note, and when we do that, it turns into a slash chord. For example, first chord is just a regular G chord. And the second chord is a G slash A because we're playing a G chord with the A as the root. There's a G slash A, and the next one would be a G slash B. The next one would be a G slash C. The next one would be a G slash D. The next one would be a G slash E. And the next one would be a G slash F sharp. And the last chord is just 3 notes. That's a G chord. So if we played that 2 measures together, you can really see how this really simple basic concept, adding the slash chords, it just walks right up. So if we played all 2 measures together, it's almost like you're playing a G chord and just walking up the scale. And slash chords are something really cool to play because you can really change up the melody and make them more moving low end as in bass notes. So you'll really see it a lot in songwriting, and just a lot of people tend to skip over it. You know, instead of playing a G slash B, they'll just play a G, and you know it's a good fake, but it doesn't really blend in. If the bass player did that, you would just lose that movement. But a lot of times the bass player, he'll do that too. He'll go up and play that B instead of the G to really give it movement. But it is a very common feature used in music and guitar playing. So that's the recap of G. I hope you learned your G shape and all the chaos that comes with it, and we'll be moving on to the D shape next, and that'll be similar to the C and G shapes, except it's just a total different shape, and it has its own resulting patterns, and it's got its own relative minor and chord variations and slash chords. So we'll get to that next, and that's all for today.